Hello, my name is Rebecca Richardson, but most people call me Becky, and today I thought we could go over some of my favourite things from July. This might just be a one-off, I just thought it'd be a cute video because there's been a lot of new things I've sort of discovered in the month of July. So this is probably just a short little video to talk about a few of those things. I thought we could do this in like categories, so I've got one thing for TV, two things for movies, one thing for songs, and two, I guess, for books. So we'll start with TV. My favourite TV show that I've found in July is Peaky Blinders. This is a show that's been around for a few years now, and I've just never watched it. I've seen the hype about it. Everybody's always like, oh, have you seen Peaky Blinders? And I just never thought to watch it. And then my friend started watching it a few weeks ago, and she was like, oh my god, it's amazing, you have to watch Peaky Blinders. And she was sending me Snapchats of her watching it and stuff. So in the end I was like, okay, I'll watch it. And I started it, and I am thoroughly enjoying it. Bearing in mind, I just finished reading Six of Crows, which is very gang-based. Peaky Blinders was exactly what I needed as I'm sort of trying to get over Six of Crows. If you don't know what Peaky Blinders is about, it follows a gang called the Peaky Blinders, funnily enough, who are a Birmingham gang in the early 1900s. I believe it's actually based on a real family because the Peaky Blinders are also a family, and the TV show centres on Tommy Shelby, who is one of the Peaky Blinders brothers, as he sort of tries to expand their business. I'm only on season 2 at the moment. I'm maybe 3 episodes in, but I am loving it so far. It is funny because it's one of those things where I recognise some of the actors. There's a particular character in it who I spent a good few episodes trying to work out where I'd seen him before, and it was driving me insane. I was like, I've seen your face, I have to know you from somewhere. And there's quite a few characters who have been in it that I've been like, who are you? And then I've picked up on it quickly. But for this particular one, it took until somebody was like, oh, that guy who was in this, for me to be like, that's what he was in. But it is one of those shows where I recognise quite a few of the people in it. It is one of those things that confuse me slightly, as I've mentioned several times before. I kind of struggle to get my head around the business thing. So I kind of struggle in the same way with Peaky Blinders that I struggled with Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo, in which there's a lot of business talk and money talk, and I just don't understand it. But it is easier to follow than Crooked Kingdom was. I can sort of follow the plot line a little better than I could, and I understand what's happening a lot better. It is definitely a TV show you have to focus on. I know a lot of people prefer just to have TV shows that they could just shove on in the background and pay little attention to, whereas I would say Peaky Blinders is something you have to sit down and actually focus to watch and to understand what's taking place. There's a few times I've zoned out and I've had to go back and rewatch bits to understand what's happening, but I don't mind that. I don't mind having to rewatch bits and make sure I understand the plot line, because I just actually enjoy it as a show. I don't watch much TV, so at the moment it takes a lot for me to actually sit down and enjoy a TV show. I do think a lot of the reason that I'm enjoying Peaky Blinders is because it reminds me a little bit of Six of Crows, which I'm still trying to get over. But also the characters in it are quite funny. It's not a comedy, but there are funny characters in it and funny bits in it. The plot line is also really interesting, and I think Tommy Shelby as a character is oddly likeable. Because he's a bad guy. The Peaky Blinders aren't good people, but you see them as the good people. You want them to win against the police who are trying to do the good things. You want the bad guys to win because they're built to be very likeable characters. One of the things people were saying going into it, they were like, oh my god, you'll love Tommy Shelby. And that just seems to be one of the things that people expect, because all of the characters are built to be very likeable, which is something I think is really interesting, that they're all pretty bad people, they kill people and beat people up, and they're criminals. They're criminals. But you do want them to win. So that's what I've been watching on TV throughout the last month, and will continue. I'm saving the rest of it for when I go on holiday so I can watch it on the plane, and I'm going to watch it on my laptop, and I'm super excited. So I would definitely recommend watching Peaky Blinders if you're into that sort of thing. There are 2 movies that I have watched so far this month. The first of them is the new Aladdin. I will say I went into the new Aladdin with not low expectations, but just expecting it to be okay, I haven't watched the original Aladdin in a very long time, so I knew that I wouldn't really know much of the music. I probably wouldn't remember all of the plot line, and I just went into it thinking, oh, it'll be good. It's Will Smith and stuff, it'll be a decent movie. And I actually really enjoyed it. I thought the visuals in it were amazing. It was very colourful and very theatrical in ways. I thought it was funny, and I thought all of the musical numbers were just massive. I'd say that was definitely my favourite bit of the movie, was definitely the big musical numbers, especially the one where they're coming into the castle, and Aladdin's pretending to be this foreign prince, and the genie's got all these elephants going on and these dancers, and it's this massive musical number. It was really good to actually watch. I suppose I don't have too much to say about it, because For a start, everybody's seen Aladdin. I don't really need to tell you the plot line of Aladdin. Also because, you know, it is a kids movie, it's not really in depth or anything. It's sort of just a light, happy movie, and I really loved all of the colours in it and all of the music in it. I did quite like the theme that ran throughout it of classism, I guess, though. There was definitely some sort of class issue being faced in it that I didn't remember from the original Aladdin. I just kind of knew he was like a thief, which I did like the way that was done, and that it was done in a way that was obvious enough for people to pick up on it without having to like really like infer and work things out, because that gets quite annoying after a while. But for a kids movie, it was definitely very fun, and it was better than I was expecting it to be. The other movie I've watched this month is Spider-Man Far From Home. This is the second Spider-Man movie that's been made by the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I really enjoyed the first one, so I was very excited about this one. Far From Home followed Spider-Man again, but after the events of Endgame. So I can't really say too much in case you haven't seen Endgame, although I think everybody at least knows what happens in Endgame at this point. The plot follows Spider-Man as he goes on a school trip around Europe, and whilst he's there, he's sort of enlisted by Nick Fury to take on these elementals, which they believe are these big monsters that are going to try and destroy the world. They know about these due to a man who ends up being given the nickname Mysterio, who claims he's from another world and that he was battling these creatures in his other world and that he can help them defeat them. One thing I really liked about this movie was the whole European aspect of it. I just love like the general aesthetic of like mainland Europe, and seeing them go through all of the different cities was just, it was a very pretty setting to watch. I also thought the plot was interesting because it was really easy to follow. It was like super easy to keep up with, but at the same time, it was also very interesting because there were plot twists that I wasn't expecting to be in there. But like with the first Spider-Man, it was also really light-hearted. There's a lot of jokes in the Spider-Mans. I find that the first one as well as this one, they're not like overly dark and deep. They're just like fun to watch, you know. It's just Spider-Man, Peter Parker, trying to like be a normal student, but at the same time he has to like save people sometimes. I like the way that it's being kept like that. Like they're very good at staying true to the character and keeping it funny. I think I am a little bit biased anyway with the Spider-Man movies because Spider-Man is my favourite superhero. He was like my first ever fictional crush, was Spider-Man on the Disney XD cartoon. So basically you can't do any wrong in my eyes. I also did really like Mysterio, or Jake Gyllenhaal's character. I didn't like him as a person, but one thing I found really interesting was the difference in how the movie was sold and what the movie was. There was a lot of interviews that Tom Holland and Jake Gyllenhaal did in which they were like, oh my god, yeah, Jake never took his suit off, he just loves it so much. He must have worn that suit in like 3 scenes. But it was very clever that they've been told to say these things. I was like, wow, you guys are such great actors. No wonder you have jobs. I felt tricked, but I was glad that I felt tricked. I was watching it and I was like, you have tricked me. I have been deceived. But it was a good thing that they hadn't just spoiled the entire plot of the movie in the interviews, and it was done in such a way that it was still like, oh, big plot twist when you actually watch the movie. So again, I feel like I don't have to really say you should watch this if you like this, because I think if you like superhero movies, if you're a Marvel fan, you've probably already watched Spider-Man. If you're not into like the Marvel DC superhero thing, probably not your type of thing. So I don't really have anybody to recommend it to because everybody's already seen it. Moving on to the favourite book I've read in July, and that is Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. I'm not going to talk about this too much because I've talked about Six of Crows so much in the last month. I finished this early July, which is why it's made my July favourite, because the only other thing I've read in July is a reread, so I didn't think it was worth talking about. But in a very quick story, Crooked Kingdom is the second book in the Six of Crows duology, and it follows all the main characters from the first one as they attempt to win a war against a rather rich councilman who has lied to them all, basically. I'd say out of the two of them, Crooked Kingdom was my least favourite, just because, like I mentioned with Peaky Blinders, I struggle kind of getting my head around the business side of things, and a lot of this was business and Kaz Brekker coming up with a plan and then getting rid of it and then coming up with another plan, and I did lose track, but I still enjoyed it. It didn't like take away from my reading experience because it meant that I could kind of follow along and see things happen as they happened, which was something that I think you were supposed to do with this. There was times where points were purposefully not included, so then when things happened you were like, oh no, everything's gone wrong, but then it would turn out to be part of the plan, so it kind of kept you on your toes. But for want to not sit and repeat myself, as I have done in several videos today talking about this series, we will just call it there on Crooked Kingdom. But if you are a fan of fantasy books as well as the sort of gang vibe I was talking about in Peaky Blinders, then I would definitely recommend picking up the Six of Crows duology. The final little category to talk about in this video is my favourite song so far of July. and that is Heartbeat by BTS. I feel like I haven't actually talked about BTS yet on this channel, like somehow they just haven't come up. I think this is like the first time they've been mentioned. Heartbeat is a new song that came out recently as part of the soundtrack for the new game they've released, BTS World. I just absolutely adore it. The first time I heard it, I was in the car, and it was like the day it came out, and I was like, oh, I'll put this on. But I only got to listen to like a bit of it because then we got home and I was like, I'll listen to the rest later. And at that point I didn't know what I was going to think of it because it felt quite soppy. But then I watched the video and I listened to the song properly and I was like, oh, I like the fact it's soppy. I don't know what it is about specifically that song. Some of the ballads they do I find aren't really my thing, but I really liked this one. I actually think my favourite bit of Heartbeat is actually the bridge section in it. I don't know why, there's just something about the notes that they sing that I was like listening to the first time and I was like, that is so good. I was like, yes, do that again, it sounds great. Just that specific bit, there's like one line that is sang twice and there's just the ending note as they sing the word love and I was like, that's just great stuff. Like, I know nothing about music, but it sounded great. I also thought the words were actually great, obviously because a lot of the songs in Korean I have to like search subtitles, so I put them on YouTube even though you can't particularly always trust YouTube's captions. There was a lot of wordplay in it which I thought was actually really cool. There's a line that RM sings in which he takes universe and then says it like universe, like I've got universe, and I was like, hey. Just little things like that make me happy when it comes to lyrics. I guess I don't have too much to say about the song other than it's just a song that makes me happy. Once I listened to it like twice, I was like, wow, this is so good, and I've just kind of had it on repeat since. It's like all I've listened to for the last few weeks. I wouldn't usually, when it comes to K-pop, I wouldn't usually recommend like slower songs as the first song for people to listen to, because I think obviously with it being in a different language, if you don't speak Korean, listening to ballads first are kind of difficult because a lot of the time ballads tend to be like lyric focused, so I always tend to recommend like the faster boppy songs that you don't really need to know the words to because you're like too busy dancing to it. But I do think along with the video, Heartbeat is sort of an exception to that. I did really enjoy the video. It was a bit trippy, not gonna lie, slightly trippy, but it had a very kind of like K-drama vibe to it as well, which I thought was cool. So I would still definitely recommend it if you were to decide to listen to some BTS, which I always recommend. But yeah, I think that is the end of my nice, hopefully short and sweet list of things that have been my favourites for this month. But before I go, there's something that I keep meaning to mention that I just haven't mentioned. I've literally had it written in capital letters at the end of all of my notes for my videos for like the last like 10 videos and I just haven't mentioned it, and that is that I have a Twitter now. I officially have like a Twitter for this account. I have like my own Twitter but I never use it because I'm not very good at Twitter, but I'm gonna make an effort. So my handle is at Becky Writes. I'll put it on the bottom. It's spelled with an I, not a Y. Just have to keep reminding people that. And I am going to make an effort to actually start using it because I don't know why I'm so scared of Twitter. Like, I use other social media platforms. I know how Twitter works. Like, it's not as if I'm like, oh, how do I use this? Like, I know what I'm doing. It just scares me for some reason. But I suppose it's a way for me to take my shit posts from Tumblr and start shit posting them on Twitter instead. So follow for that content. But that is it. That's the only self-promo we're doing in this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you very soon. Bye!